everybody, it's Mike DiLisio, and welcome to my next installment of my top 50 solo games of all time on the 2021 Dice Tower Spring Spectacular. Well, we're having 30 through 21 on this installment, some great games on the list, so let's go ahead and just get started. At number 30 is a Troops on a Map style game called Mezzo. Now, Mezzo is a game that you need the Souls for Xibalba expansion to play as a solo game. But what you're doing is you are playing as a Mesoamerican god trying to rise up into the pantheon of the greatest Mesoamerican gods. And you're doing this on a map, as you might expect if it's a Troops on a Map style game. And you have rival gods that are also trying to compete for you. So there's some area majority, but it's a really, really clever game that, again, this is a type of game that 10, 15 years ago, there's no way they would have tried to make this into a solo game, but it is such a satisfying experience. If you're in the mood for a Troops on the Map style game, Mezzo is a great option for you if you want to play it solo. It's controlled through a card-driven AI system where you really, really feel that tension as if you were playing against another player. A really well done game, a fantastic theme, I think, that's not been used very often, if at all. Mezzo is a really, really good, unique take on the Troops on the Map style game and a great solo game. All right, my number 29 is Dice Settlers. Dice Settlers is a game where you have these custom dice, and it's a bag building game where you are drawing dice out of a bag and you're trying to get some of these specialized dice that will allow you to do different things. What types of things are you trying to do? Well, you're trying to settle, as you might expect from the name of the game. You're putting out tiles on a map that you're building out, and you're trying to gain area majority on those tiles. So there's a lot of area majority, area control in the game. You're trying to build your little tents that are going to allow you to score points at the end of the game. And you are competing against an AI opponent known as the Diceneer. And it's done through a really clever system. It has a little tile that's kind of circular, and you're going to be placing the Diceneer's dice around this tile, and it's going to tell you what they do on their turn. This is a game, much like Mezzo that I just mentioned, where maybe you wouldn't think that this could work as a solo game, but it works really, really well. It's a game that forces you to really be worried about what the AI opponent is going to do at least as much as what you're going to do. A lot of interaction, and great that you can play this as a solo game. That is Dice Settlers. All right, my number 28 is a really quirky cooperative game called The Loop. In The Loop, you are trying to face off against the evil Dr. Fu, who is trying to manipulate the space-time continuum and cause all kinds of anomalies. And this is done through a really unique little system where there's a small, I hesitate to call it a cube tower because it's really, really small, but what it does is it's at the center of this kind of circular board that has different locations, and you put these peril cubes in the top of this little cube tower, and they spill out and they cause peril, as you might expect. Too much peril and that location gets destroyed and causes problems. But what you're doing is you are playing as these different aliens that are trying to stop Dr. Fu, and you have a deck of cards. And these cards are going to allow you to do things to manipulate, remove those peril cubes, to put out energy cubes that are going to allow you to do the things that you need to do to complete the mission. So you play cards, and what's really cool about it, what kind of the hook of this game is, the time travel type of a hook is that if you play out cards that allow you to do certain things, you exhaust them. Sounds pretty normal. But if you can spend energy at the location that you are at, you can untap those cards and do those abilities again. So you can kind of create these loops where you can get these super powerful turns where you can remove a bunch of peril and move these little duplicate tokens that he's putting around the board, Dr. Fu is, and you're all trying to complete, well, you are the only one playing, you're trying to complete these missions that are around the outside of the board. And it might be to remove a certain number of peril in the location where Dr. Fu is pointing, or there's any number of different missions that you're trying to complete. Really cool theme, a little clever twist on what might feel like, cooperative games all do the same thing. Bad things happen, you have to deal with them. But this has a nice little twist on it. That is The Loop. Number 27 is Gloomhaven, Jaws of the Lion. Now, I have a complicated history with Gloomhaven, the kind of the big box game. It's a game that I appreciated. I liked the card play system, but I knew pretty quickly on that this was not a game for me. It was too big, too sprawling. I'd look at it up on the shelf, this huge box, and all the time it took to set it up and tear it down, and more often than not, I just decided to pick something else. Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion is what I wanted Gloomhaven to be. It has all of that satisfying card-driven gameplay, cooperative gameplay, in a much smaller package where you've got a spiral-bound book that contains all of the different scenarios that you're going through. It is so much easier to set up and tear down, and it also walks you through the process with a really nice kind of tutorial system. The first few scenarios really walk you through what it takes to play Gloomhaven. It is such a accessible game. And Gloomhaven is a game that I think most people would enjoy if they could play it. And this is a game that allows you to play this system in like I said, just an accessible way. A great achievement. I'm really happy with Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion. Number 26 is Fleet the Dice Game. This is a roll and write game, which is basically like you've got sheets of paper and you're rolling dice and you're checking off boxes. Now, that sounds very simplistic, but Fleet the Dice Game is such a satisfying, combo-rific experience. You've got 2 sheets of paper and you're rolling and drafting dice, and the whole kind of hook of this game for me, fishing, well, no, bad pun aside, is that you are building up these turns where you could check one item off of a list and it's like, oh, now that I've done that, that allows me to unlock this. Oh, and now that I've unlocked this, that's going to allow me to do this. It just builds up to these super satisfying turns so that by the end of the game, you feel like every time you're drafting a die, you're allowed to check off 5 or 6 boxes. Really, really well done. One of my favorites of this roll and write genre, that is Fleet the Dice Game. Number 25 is Marvel United. This is a cooperative game built in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, as you might expect, where you are playing as one of the iconic Marvel heroes, and you are facing off against one of the Marvel baddies. And you do this by going to locations that are set up in a circular manner. They're cards around the board there. And you're moving your characters, and you're fighting off minions, and you're eventually trying to defeat the big bad enemy, whoever it might be. And the different enemies will play out slightly differently. The heroes play out pretty similarly, but it's just a really, really simple, and I want to stress that. This is a very simple game. But sometimes that's what I'm looking for in a solo game, is a game that I can get down, get set up, get playing, have a nice experience, and not feel like my brain's going to explode. Marvel United is that type of a game. I feel like it has just the right amount of decision space when I'm in the mood for that type of a game. Really good solo game. Number 24 is Tiny Epic Quest. There have been a whole lot of games in the Tiny Epic line, and this is my favorite of them. And all of them have a solo variant, but my favorite of them, as I said, is Tiny Epic Quest. This is a game that, if you look at it, there's really no surprise that they're kind of evoking a Zelda feel here. In Tiny Epic Quest, it plays off in 2 halves. The first half is kind of a spatial puzzle game where you are using movement cards to move around a map to try to get different resources to set yourself up for the second part of the game, which is a push your luck dice rolling game. I like both halves of the game. I like how well they come together. It's a really cool, to me, I like the theme. They've got these item meeples, they're called, where you're moving your little meeple around, and it's got spots where you can put little plastic gear. So let's say that you've been able to get a crossbow. There's a little plastic crossbow that you can attach to your item meeple. Gimmicky, yes, but cute. I like it. The gimmick works for me. The game works for me. That is Tiny Epic Quest. Number 23 is a push your luck game, Port Royal. Now, this is another game that needs the expansion to be played solo, but it is, as I said, a push your luck game. I love push your luck games. This is really a deck of cards, maybe a couple of deck of cards, but what you're trying to do is push your luck to complete these missions that in the solo game, you have a number of different missions that you're trying to complete before the deck runs out. Very, very simple. Rules light. Doesn't take any time at all to learn the game. but it's sometimes when I'm in the mood for a just condensed, pure experience, this is the game I pull down because I really like push your luck games, I like simple card games, and this is just very satisfying for me. That is Port Royal. At number 22 is Nemo's War. Nemo's War is a game that you can play it cooperatively, but in my mind, this is purely a solitaire experience. And it's based on the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea universe where you are playing as Captain Nemo and you are trying to complete different missions. And this is done by flipping over cards. And each of these cards is going to be presenting you with a certain type of obstacle that you have to overcome. And it's usually done, well, it's always done through rolling dice. There's a whole lot of dice rolling in Nemo's War, and you have to be comfortable with that. But there is some mitigation with that dice rolling. You are doing some push your luck where you are betting that you are able to use particular parts of your crew or the hull of your ship to try to help you complete these checks. And if you're successful, then what you are wagering can go back. But if you're not, then you're damaging your ship, you're damaging your crew, etc. Really well done. There's a bit of a storytelling element to the game. I wouldn't say it's a purely storytelling game, but at the end of the game, I do feel like you've gone on a bit of a narrative experience. Nemo's War is just such a beautiful game, first of all, really, really striking, and very, very well done, satisfying experience. All right, final game on this list, number 21, is Wingspan. Now, Wingspan is a bit of a phenomenon in general. It's got a lovely theme where you are trying to create the best aviary to attract the most beautiful birds, but this is essentially done by cards. Each card is a different bird. And you have a player board in front of you with 3 different environments, and you play the birds into the appropriate environments. These birds have different powers that you're trying to trigger to get the most points. And you're playing against an AI opponent, an Automa deck of cards, where you flip over the card and it's going to tell you what your opponent is doing. Very easy to administer, very satisfying game. Wingspan, as an actual game itself, has done so tremendously well. It has brought new people into the hobby. It's got gorgeous art, beautiful production, and it's a very, very satisfying solo game as well. Can't recommend it highly enough. That's my number 21, Wingspan. All right. Another list down. We're down to the top 20 coming up. So keep watching the fantastic content that we've got on our Dice Tower 2021 Spring Spectacular, and I hope to catch you on my next list.